Thank you. Shonda Buchanan is an award-winning author and educated. She's freelanced for the Los Angeles Times, the LA Weekly, the Associated Writers programs, The Writer and Chronicle, Indian Country Today, Westways Magazine, Sisters of AARP, and the International Review of African American Art. She's published in numerous journals and magazines, including the Black Experience Anthology, the Mississippi Review, Urban Voices, and Reading, Strange Cargo, and I won't go on there. She's also been a judge of quite a few contests. Um, and she has taught at schools and for writing programs in the Los Angeles area. And as you've heard, she now teaches in the English department at Western Michigan University. She's written a recent book of poems uh, uh, called The Lost
The
Song.
Lost Songs of Nina Simone.
Yes, the Lost Songs of Nina Simone. Nina Simone was an iconic, you probably know of her already. She was an iconic figure in the Black Arts movement and and an activist uh, 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 during the Civil Rights movement and afterwards. She's also written Black Indian. It's a searing, raw memoir, beautifully rendered, rippling with family dysfunction, secrets, deaths, alcoholism, old resentments, and yet it's an inspiring story that explores her family legacy of being African American and with African Americans with American Indian roots, and it shows how they dealt with not just society's ostracization, but with the consequences of this dual inheritance. So let's welcome Shonda Buchanan.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very grateful to be here. Um, yes, thank you for that wonderful introduction. So, I love questions in, between sometimes these kinds of readings, but I'll start with a couple of poems from the book The Lost Songs of Nina Simone, which comes out May 26th, 2025. So please pre-order a copy. So I'm going to start in the middle. I haven't read this poem or these poems in the middle much because this book really looks at the trajectory of the life of Nina Simone and how she was the product of her ancestors, being born in Tryon, North Carolina. And so I have poems about kind of the ancestral who came before her. And then I'm writing about her childhood, going to high school, and then finally when she gets into her career as a Nina Simone. And so I'm going to start in the middle and I'm going to read um, Carnegie Hall, which is the first. Nina Simone always said, I want to play Carnegie Hall. And so she and her husband, who was her manager at the time, put together their money and she performed at Carnegie Hall. Carnegie Hall. Tenderly fingers on unforgiving white teeth, pressing raped black bone. Nina taps foot. Black ramrod straight, cloaked in cream gown as prisms of melody fill hollow parts of her country mouth. She is again a child of the Middle South, crossing ragged train tracks in porous sun, not playing Bach, a queen haunted by her skills, a queen haunted by her kills, returning to herself, excavating ghosts, clinging to salty Atlantic Ocean's crimson past, circling North Star axis of sound vibrating in black holes, blinking in and out across the stage, plunging her into darkness until she lands. Nina plays and pounds until her knuckles crack, throat aches, until she spits, shakes, fever comes. Whiskey and gin peel from her in ancient pleats of sweat. It feels like forever, like wandering in buried tombs, like this moment will never come again. And she punches and slaps and holds them, those ghosts, not back, until night, then day, then twilight, then night, inside her bouquet of flowers, dress her. She is a hematite stone on a hard piano bench, a forgotten talisman atop a looted temple, a pillaged Egyptian shrine where we used to pray, a goddess flecked, golden, immortal. No one sees her after the music stops. No one sees. It is a glorious death. Um, it's interesting that poem is the poem that we think of Anina. We think of her as performing. We think of her as someone who, if anyone has seen Nina Simone in person, which I did not have that um, opportunity to see her, uh, the story behind that is I had my ticket to go and see Nina Simone at the Wiltern Theater in Los Angeles many years ago. And my aunt in Kalamazoo died, and the funeral was the day of the concert. And so I went to my aunt's funeral, and I didn't get a chance to see Nina Simone in Los Angeles. And then subsequently, she basically went back to France and to my mind was only touring, but never came back to America. Um, I even went to Paris to try to interview her, and that didn't happen. So that's what we think of when we think of Nina Simone. We think of her as performing. But I'm going to read a poem, which in my mind, it's the moment before she becomes Nina. It's the transformational poem. And if you think about for yourselves, what's that moment that you became who you are, right? So, metamorphosis. Shift was delicate, slight, like the swipe of dust on a finger, brushed off quickly, a ghost's hand passing over a little girl's face then body, slender tenor saxophone in a smoky bar. I could become someone else, call myself another name. Shift was cool in my mouth, then peach sweet. My first taste of fire, first coins, family taken care of, my first white man who said he loved me, adulthood thrust in, cloaked me, cigarette kissed club on Atlantic Boardwalk, where I lived from 7 a.m. to midnight and died come dawn. Atlantic City, New York, where all odd things came to become greater than the sum of their parts, to be reborn. Um, so it's interesting when people I've read some of these poems and people have said, "Oh, what's the part about the white man?" Well, Nina Simone's first husband was white. He was someone who she met in her club at the club where she was performing on the Atlantic Boardwalk, and it was such a fast marriage. It was like super fast. But that was her first husband, and then Andy Stroud was her next husband. Any questions so far? Any thoughts or comments? I'm curious.
Well, I had an when Ed was introducing you, he said the poems were persona poems, but the first one, Carnegie, is in third person. And this one, the
Mhm,
Metamorphosis, is in first person. I loved them both, by the way, but
mhm,
I'm wondering how the two mixing third person and first person, how they played
mhm.
off in the book, and if you had any problems with that.
Yeah, that's a great question because sometimes I literally felt like I had to step outside of her personality. I felt if I would have stayed inside um, the Nina that I read about, that I saw perform, saw her interviews, and if I would have stayed in that voice, I would not have been able to overview. So some of them are definitely persona poems in her voice. Some are poems, third person, my voice. Um, so there is the you, there is the I, there is the she, throughout the book. And I felt like I actually went and changed some of the pronouns for some of the poems because I felt as if I needed to serve the poem. Um, so for example, the poem Metamorphosis that I read was it was part when I say the shift was delicate. So the first stanza is really the poet me writing about her, and then the next stanza is her question of I could become someone else, call myself another name. Shift was cool in my mouth. Um, so it allows me to come to her life, her work, her craft in a different way.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I
Thank you
just wondered if, how you played that out in the book, if there was like some difficulty in meshing the poems. No?
Yeah. No, no difficulty for me. Um, but again, I had to go back. So there's a poem in here, which is, let me see if I can find it because I said, wait a minute, you don't have a poem that's speaking about this in her voice. And so I went back and wrote, where is it? Not Carnegie Hall. I read Carnegie Hall. It was when she bought her first apartment in New York and she needed to step out. And she was like, who does this? Nobody does this like me. Where is it? Ah, it's before. Yes, here it is. Oh, and then I'll go to watch night too. Okay, it is. I keep skipping the poem. There it is. Okay, 415 Central Park, Manhattan, circa 1960. And this is her first person. I was sharp. Black hot pants, toes freshly done, Jackie Onassis, shades, and my Hepburn scarf. No one could touch me that day. As I bought my first home with my own money, Mama, look at me now. What black woman has herself these kinds of digs, this status and wealth? Ain't seen a one yet. Those were the early days when Al would bring the boys up, give me a drink, give me yellow pills to sleep, orange pills to go on stage. I was hot as fire, Mama. Even doped up, I could play until dawn, until we got it right, until the Manhattan mad day crept back awake and the saints marching in. Bought us a house, Mama. I bought us a house in the white people's neighborhood. Put paisley prims on white walls. So forgive me. Put paisley prints on white walls so I could bang my head a little if I needed to. Gave birth to a baby girl. I loved more than the sounds I heard coming out of my piano, more than all the caterpillar notes. I tickle from blue corn Carolina air. She is our alchemy future. And behind me, Andy watches, all protective and jealous, crazy as a hog tied up in its pen. I loved it for a time. He hadn't yet learned how to bring my milk in, to be sweet to me, but I loved his rough ways anyway. His eyes like lizards on my body, on my money. But I got me a pretty car. And I'm driving around New York City as a diamond ring in my furs, showing everybody what a dark-skinned black woman in America can do. Mama, look at me now. Please look at me. So I realized I was like, I had to have a poem where, like, one of the things that I have gleaned from Nina's music is her longing for things. And it could be the longing for love, the longing to be understood. One of my favorite songs, Love Me, Love Me, Love Me, Say You Do, which is wild as the wind. Let me fly away with you, for my love is like the wind. And I think that's an undergirding that I had in this poem was their sense of, as a child, she wanted to become this musician. She wanted to play Carnegie Hall. She wanted to go to Curtis Institute. Um, and then uh, when she couldn't go to Curtis Institute, she had to make a life for herself. So I think these poems really are threaded with that longing for everything in her life that she didn't get and that she wanted. Um, so yes. And I'll read a couple of more poems from this because I don't want you all to be like, oh, she read me the whole book, so I don't need to buy the book. Um, so this is a poem when she met her second husband, Andy Stroud. It became it was love and then it became something different. It became an abusive relationship. And so I have poems in here exploring what marriage means to her. And this one is called Faith. Marriage is the religion we no longer practice in the country our house has become. We stand on opposite sides of the fault lines, pinning kisses like medallions to our chest, wishing for the best. The man I married breathes through a trombone of bitter buttermilk, churning it for the wife he wishes he had. I can't find him in the expanse across the waves of clashing gunfire, so silent. We are asleep when the bombs hit us. I hold the face he has not touched tenderly in years at an odd angle in front of my friends and weep moths through my smile. They, like those bullshit politicians, are clueless to the rip and tear of sacred sheets of blessed bread, the creamy sour wine. Every morning in my bed, in my one room I have claimed in the house I bought, as any ant can claim a hill before the giant crushes her. I cup my heart through the skin, breastbone, and it pulses, rushing blood you pressed from me, husband. I learn again to pray. So, thank you all. Thank you. Yeah. It's so interesting to see the fruition of this book. It's been, my gosh. I started submitting poems for feedback to my Antioch University group. This was in, gosh, 2008, I think, 2009. And so I've been like a spider pulling these poems from the air and researching them, and really looking at her mixed raciality as well. Because Nina, in her book, The Autobiography of Nina Simone, she says that her people were African, they were indigenous, and then they were Irish. And so I play a lot with, in fact, I did a lot of research. I did a residency in Wyoming, and I had all these Nina books, and then I was doing research online, and I found um, a document that talked about how the line was drawn between North Carolina and South Carolina by a drunk Irishman. And so, and I was like, what? And so they were like, and they had to like go back and redraw it. But I was like, is this real? Is this documentation? So I just started thinking about like how Nina had to literally and figuratively, she was she was the isthmus of like those three races coming together. And then also there was this the concept, the idea of being crossed at the same time. So so this one is called Low Country Deeds. Mixing of the races was simple, a mathematical necessity of pollination, harvests unforeseen. They were seedlings, blood moon babies, children of the gullah, mulatto, octoroon, quadroon. Nina's Cherokee great grandmother claimed her Irish blood and married an African. Her grandmother's mother, half Irish and Indian, married another enslaved man. Little Eunice was the proof, an isthmus of three rivers flowing through her butterfly heart. She shared the blood of first generation South Carolina Irishmen who signed the Declaration of Independence, ignoring alongside those African and Indian blood, the blood spilled in plantation rebellions they hid. Eunice inherited corn maidens in one hand and rice-filled dreams in the other. Even Andrew Jackson's impoverished migrant Scot-Irish parents turned slaver when they found out the rumors were true. Everything could be bought in Low Country. Everything could be claimed. Thank you, thank you. So those are poems from here. Any other questions as I move to another? And how long do I have? Like, what's my time?
Your time is your time. You take what you can give us. Um, I think that Judy has a question. Judy?
Hi, Shonda. I have to say I'm not familiar with your poetry, but I just ordered it from Amazon. So
Thank you.
your last poem really struck me. I was very touched by that, being Jewish, and I can understand some of the emotion there. I'm curious. I write some poetry myself, and I'm just curious what your reservoir is for
Mm.
coming up with these. I mean, is it like the chicken and the egg kind of a thing? Sometimes it's experience
Mm.
that brings it up. Sometimes it's your, or exposure to something. Sometimes it's your interest in something and you have to do research, and that's what gives you the well of resources to write some of these. I'm just curious how you develop these.
Mm. All of that. That's such a fantastic way of looking at it in terms of the reservoir. My reservoir is Lake Michigan. I am never empty for ideas and thoughts and curiosity and where poems come from. Um, for this book, for The Lost Songs of Nina Simone, the first thing that impressed me enough to write a poem was that Nina Simone had a hard life, and the women in my family also had hard lives. And I think one of the first poems that I wrote is a poem about how Nina, it, saying that Nina reminded me of my aunts who drank their livers into roaches. That's one of the lines in my poem. And so, but at the same time, she didn't hide the things that she had gone through, right? You know, she would sing about it. She was on the world stage. And I thought it was so powerful for her to remain an icon, a genius, um, even though there were multiple times that she broke down, and even though she had addictions, and even, towards the end, she only realized, I think in her late 60s, that she was bipolar, which is why her daughter had such a terrible time being raised by her mom. But the poems come from the sense of, oh, I had that experience. oh, let me see what it was like for Nina and write about that. And then it was, oh, this is historical. This is when Nina Simone was on stage and this thing happened. I need to put that into a poem. And then another area was motherhood. Like I have to write about her motherhood because what is it like for an artist, someone of Nina's caliber, who was a Black woman in Jim Crow South? Right? What was it like for her as a mother? And so the poems come from all these different places, um, where I'm hoping that I represent her. Someone asked me on Facebook a couple of days ago if I'd interviewed her daughter, Lisa. And did not interview Lisa. Simone, who is a singer herself. She's an amazing singer, I hear. And I also did not watch any of the movies about Nina Simone because I didn't want to be influenced in the writing of the book. I wanted Nina to talk to me herself, and I wanted to hear whatever it is that she wanted to say, that her ghost was saying, that history allowed, um, uh, something that she said to students at Morehouse or students at Spelman or on, when she was marching, in the civil rights marches. So I wanted to hear Nina's voice, and now I'm curious and nervous to see what Lisa might think about it. So I'm probably just going to send Lisa the book and say, "Hey, I hope these are okay." I hope it's okay that I wrote about your mom, in a good way. Thank you for that question, though.
I can't imagine
Um,
her being in any way upset by the beauty of what
mm,
you have written. I'm sure that she is going to be probably brought to tears and also very
mm,
grateful to you for having memorialized her mother in that way. It's beautiful.
thank you.
Thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. I've got some poems for Lisa in here too, so we'll see.
Mhm. I
I'm
think
gonna
Ed
shift to,
wanted,
oh,
Yes,
sorry.
I had a question. Uh,
Mhm.
you explained how you were hoping to hear her in concert and then couldn't do it because of a funeral, and then you tried to interview her in Paris and were frustrated in that. Did those events impel you to work out your own imaginative uh, account and write a whole book involved with this person you admired so much?
Yeah, I think a part of it was I wanted to see, how they say, your hero has clay feet, or your shero has clay feet. When you meet them, it's not going to be the same thing. But for me, it was a bit of there's this elusiveness happening, trying to go and see her and meet her. And for the Paris trip, I actually wrote. So I was going to interview her for a newspaper that I was working for, which was the LA Weekly in Los Angeles. And when I got to Paris, we were in the Latin Quarter, and I met with supposedly her manager, and he felt a little oily. He felt like he was one of the managers who had taken advantage of her. And we were talking, trying to schedule a time when I would go to the south of France to Carry La Rue, which is where she lived. And then we're about to leave, and he says, and Nina's gonna want to be paid. And I was like, my publication is not going to pay Nina Simone. That was not something you said to me when I was in America. The LA Weekly isn't going to pay. Um, so what happened? I think that was my fourth to last day being in Paris. He never called me back. Um, I never went to Carrie La Rue. And I wrote the article anyway for the LA Times, and it's called Searching for Nina Simone. And that became a piece of um, the poems where I say that there's this longing, and there was also a longing in me, to know more about woman artist mother who I think I fashioned maybe my voice or my tone, from, and I'm not the only one. She has inspired so many people that she's performed with. Bob Dylan. You can go from Lauryn Hill. I mean, there's so many people who were blessed to play with Nina or to be in her presence. And then there were other people who saw, a different side of the drunken side of her as well. So yes, to answer your question, there was that sense of, you know, I, I was not in like a room with her. And so what will your imagination do as a poet, as a writer? What can you do?
It does
And
sound,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
it, it,
There
it
were
sounds
many
like,
people. Mhm.
I was going to say, it sounds like the manager, the middleman, was
Yeah.
mercenary and insisted on a fee,
Mhm.
and that became a condition for your seeing her. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah, it was. It definitely. I have to say that there have been books that I've read about prominent figures that inspired me as well. So Taimba Jess wrote Lead Belly. Taimba Jess is a National Book Award winner, Pulitzer Prize winner, friend of mine. My gosh, Kevin Young, who is the former executive director of the African American National African American Museum, wrote Jelly Roll. So Mahogany Brown. I mean, there are people who have written work about folks they've never met. And we, as poets, as writers, we give it, a sense of an imagination. And so I allowed myself that poetic license.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah. It's gonna be lovely. I'm actually going to Paris in May to give a couple of readings. Um, so it'll be exciting to see how it's received in Europe, which was her last home. So I'm going to
Great.
shift to read a little bit from my memoir, Black Indian, and maybe you'll see a little bit in this first chapter of that sense of longing that I was talking about, and how Nina's life reminded me of my mom and my aunts, and just kind of this whole the secrets in my family, growing up here in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and my people being some of the first free people of color to settle in Matawan and Kalamazoo, Dowajack, Ostrimo. So this is the first chapter called Wait. Wait. To tell you any of these stories, I have to tell you the first, the very first. Somewhere in Matawan, Michigan, there is an infant buried on top of a 13-year-old girl's grave. The infant stillborn was given a name anyway, but the wind buried the syllables under its cool tongue. The child's sutured eyes and never kissed lips greeted that 1950s winter sky, the color of heron wings, when her father, my grandfather, opened another mute hole in the earth and laid his second unforgiving child's body to rest in her sister's slender waiting arms. Finally, someone to hold. Frida shifted and yawned into the earth. Together there, my two aunts, the virgin and the infant, kept each other safe. They shared the secret of each other's bones, and there were lots of secrets. Maybe I am the unborn child. Perhaps she returned in me to tell our story from my woman child's hands, Velma Jean's daughter's hands, fourth girl child's hands, since we are, after all, the baby girls, and at once the sixth seed. We both prefer the dint of rain in the earth to the din of voices, the fists, the liquor laugh screams at family gatherings. Equally, we cherish our silence. And if I am her, what did I see hovering over the farm before the last mound of dirt covered me? What would I say first? Maybe something about the Potawatomi and the Odawa and the Ojibwe building wigwams, on riverbanks before French trappers, missionaries, and settlers came. Something about Mama's sweet cornbread and Daddy's cold beer. The 5 little burnished yellow Mattawan fairies, mulatto skin, Pocahontas eyes. I would take you to the fields, to Wolf Lake, to the bait house, push you in a swing, in a tire swing laced to the top branch of the weeping willow in the front yard, push you until you were dizzy, and then I would say it. What I don't know, I can't tell. That first chapter is very poet mouth, as my friends say. Very poet mouth. So this book really, Black Indian, has so much of my family's story and narrative. It also has a lot of history of the coming together of African Americans and American Indians, and where they intersected and where we intersected. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, so maybe I'll skip to one part where people always ask me, how do you know you're Indian? How do you know you've got that? And so let me see if let me pull. There's a section in here in the book where oh, here it is. Okay. You know you got some Indian in you, my mother proudly crooned every 6 months or so when we were growing up. How does she know? Her Aunt Catherine, our family historian, told her. Mama's father told her. Her cousins and uncles told my mom and aunt stories about being from a tribe in Mattawan, but later her dad said Oklahoma. Yet none of them did the research. My research uncovered our route. We were migration trail transplants from the eastern shores that lined the edges of the first counties that formed the Union. My mother's great-grandpa Manuel married Ida Mahoney, and Ida's mom, Mariah Ann Peake, is listed on a family photograph as being full-blood Cherokee. But a later pedigree chart from my great-aunt Catherine lists Mariah as both Delaware Cherokee and Pequot Indian, born in Oklahoma. The Manuel men were full or mixed blood Kihari Noose Indians from Sampson County, North Carolina. They'd either married Indian or Black, or other mixed race women like Ida. My great aunt Catherine was the first to handwrite a family tree that showed the names and dates and ethnicities in her spider-like scrawl, and I traced the rest like an explorer, using her genealogical treasure map. My mom's grandmother, Caldonia Frances Stafford Roberts, a Roberts by birth, was 1/4 Cherokee. Caldonia, also known as Callie D, was a descendant of the first settlement, one of the first free people of color settlements in Indiana in 1830. Theirs was a mixed race, bi and triracial community of light, bright people who traded with the Quakers. The Roberts family lore has it that the patriarch, James Roberts, born in the mid-1700s, was the son of an American Indian mother and free African servant who was never a slave. So I had to put all this, that's the kind of the history where people are like, how do you know? So I had to include that in here, my records, my research, my the delineation of us. And I have to say, I'm really proud of something that happened. PBS NewsHour voted my book one of top 20 books to read to learn about institutional racism. And I thought I was just talking about my family. And it was like, no, 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 you're actually unraveling the what we call the reclassification of races in America and how it actually, went down and who did what and what laws were passed. So, um, okay, I'm going to just read one more section in here. And then I'm going to I'm going to close with a poem. So it's so exciting. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to do, this is family. So Okay, hold on 1 second. All righty. It's funny. I'm like, no, they don't want to hear that part, but who knows? All right. So I'm going to end with this part for this book. So I traced my ancestry. I traced my roots. I started doing American Indian ceremony. I was always doing African ceremony, but I started doing sweat lodges and powwows and dancing and doing other ceremony. And so this was kind of a moment. It's chapter 33 in Black Indian. And this is me, you know, coming to my first ceremony and then getting scared as all get out to actually do it. So it's like, I don't know if I want to do it. It's called The Making of an Indian. As we ascend the last dirt hill into a clearing, I look around at what my boyfriend Charles calls a Native American preserve, not a reservation, where several old trailers dot the outskirts of the encampment in Los Padres National Forest. A few in the center look like lean-tos. We are in a hip pocket of the California mountains. It has taken us, my boyfriend, his mother, and three other women friends, 3 hours to drive from Los Angeles up the winding mountain roads and get coughed into a dry, shale-laden, rabbit sage-riddled valley. The pungent scent of the sage is so strong, it's intoxicating. We've driven on unnamed roads over bumps that nearly popped our tires out, and now with the windows open, the evening air is clean and clear, smelling like crystals would smell if they had a scent. I feel like I'm inhaling water as I drive, and I didn't know I was thirsty. It's like I'm asleep and waking up at the same time. Elated to be out of the city in real nature, I think I have to bring my daughter here, and it's almost as if I can see the words floating before me in the air. This isn't the only preserve in these mountains, my boyfriend says, gauging my delight from my intense wow, wow, wow every few minutes. He rolls up his window against the mountain chill. There are so many others. I'm going to skip up a little bit to, okay. Um, Charles starts over to the fire pit dug deep into the ground. The pit has a circle etched in the sides that you can walk all the way around. He grabs a handful of tobacco, holds it high toward the sun, and tosses it in. Hey, Charles, two women call. Good to see you, brother. Is this your mom and your girlfriend? Yes. And I need a bathroom, his mom says. One of the women takes her to the outhouse toward the back. Always loving and publicly affectionate with me, Charles folds my arm in his. This is my companion, and she's here for the women's sweat. No, she isn't. Despite having opened myself into taking a community name in Yesha, which means rain in Kiswahili, to help me get cleared of old habits. My first instinct about a traditional women's sweat in is a hard-edged Stafford style no. I don't want to go in there. I don't know what to expect. Charles hasn't told me anything as we've driven up the mountain, drinking air, controlling, self-protecting. I need a little more warning to get nicked in front of, I'm sorry, to get naked in front of strange women and crawl around in the dirt. Nope, I'm not going in there. Not me, not Velma's daughter. So I'll pause there. Eventually I go in. It starts raining and it's like creator was like, oh, you're going to go in or you're going to get wet. And so that's what happened. But it's always an interesting piece when we romanticize American Indian culture, Native culture, Indigenous culture. Sometimes we romanticize things of the past. And then when you actually have the opportunity to do it, and the American part of you, the Westernization, assimilation part of you was like, can I do that? And then it becomes habit forming. And it's like, oh, this is what it means to sing a song. Like, in fact, when I first started doing Sweat Lodge, I was silent for 4 years in the Sweat Lodge, and people would sing songs, and they would say, sing songs. What's the song from the Shumash? This is a children's Shumash honoring song. We ha ya ya yo, we ha ya ya yo. We hi yo, we hi yo, we hi yo, ho way, ho way, ho way, ya hey yo. It took me 4 years to be brave enough to sing like that song. Um, I was quiet. One time someone said, "Sis, do you have a song?" And so I sang an African dance song. Um, but I learned that a part of indigenous culture is you have to watch and you have to be quiet, and then you learn, and then suddenly someone says, "Can you sing that song?" And then you're in. Um, any questions about that? Thank you, thank you. So I think, do I have time? What's our time? I feel like there's no time. There's no
It's
time here.
just coming up on 8 o'clock right now. So take a
Oh,
few
perfect.
minutes,
Okay.
Shonda. And you said you were going to close us with a poem. At least do that.
Yes. Okay. I'll close with one poem. Um, so this is my first book of poetry, Who's Afraid of Black Indians? And I wrote this one because there were so many over the years of dancing powwow and researching, I shouldn't say researching because really it was more participating. And then sometimes I'd be confronted with, indigenous people saying to me, why don't you just stay Indian? And then other people would say, African American people would say to me, why do you have to claim Indian? Why can't you just stay Black? And so I really wrote this book because I wanted to look at those reasons why um, I want to say this in a couple of different ways. Emotionally, I can understand why people claim a race or ethnicity, um, because I'll speak like African Americans can say we do have some Indian in us, and it makes us feel good to feel like the thought is to not only be Black. So that's one thought. The other thought is culturally, we do have the right, if you have that ethnicity and that heritage, to say, yes, I have some Indian in me, and it's not me trying to make myself feel better. And then you have other folks who claim it, they don't know if they have it, or they do their DNA and suddenly they're like, they don't have any DNA. I did my DNA and I've got my ancestry, my bloodline, and they get very sad about that too. So there's mental, there's emotional, there's cultural, psychological kind of schisms that happen when you think about mixed raciality. And so some of these poems, I really wanted to, in this book, I wanted to show that beauty, and then I wanted to show the hardship of it. So first, actually, I'll read one that's a little bit of a hardship, and then I'll do a quick close for one that's the beauty of it. This one is called Five Civilized Tribes, and it details how the five civilized tribes, the Chickasaw, Creek, Choctaw, Cherokee, and Seminole, owned African American slaves. And this is the poem that I wrote for that section, this moment in time. Poets, 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 correct, correct, correct the history books. Those tribes that held my sable-palmed mothers by our throats, with 5 fingers given to them by Andrew Jackson, 5 hands soiled by myth of a wild west, 5 legs of bullet, straw, and pine, no feathers or horses, no buffalo heart, 5 very different notions of smoke and lodge and breeding than they began with before the great walk, the trail of tears. Over 60,000 forced into an Oklahoma shoebox, 4,000 crumbling along the way. How many were we, Black and Indian? Their slaves, their lovers, their wives, their half-breed children, their slaves. We cassava heartbreak singing to a wolf moon. We deranged fallen seed, corn husks, and silt. They all look the same to us. We all look the same. If this is civilized, let us be the savages. If these are my cousins, my brothers walking over my grave, I'll be the barbarian. So, yeah, 5 civilized tribes. That's a tragic moment and a tragic period in our history. And Black slaves were on the trail of tears with indigenous people. So I'll end with on a positive note. This is um, this poem was written. Do I have any people who are from the East Side or born on or who lived on the East Side? You know where the East Side is in Kalamazoo, Southworth Terrace. So I grew up on, I was born on the North Side and I grew up on the Southworth Terrace, but I kind of grew up all over Kalamazoo, and Mattawan. We lived on my grandpa's farm in Mattawan for 3 years. I went to Paw Middle School. We lived on the South Side, North Side again. I mean, so I don't know. I feel like I'm like Miss Kalamazoo. So this poem was written, about my childhood on the East Side, and it's for my mom. My mother was a grass dancer. Sharp scent, cold blades slapped my legs as I ran in our yard on Southworth Terrace. I was 6 or 7. That summer, Mama let the grass grow tall as me, 3 or 4 feet, and someone called the city on us. But she didn't care. It reminded her of the country and childhood, of her father and the cornfields where she deposited her secrets in until growing up happened against her like a rock. And then we came, and the cutting of the grass followed. As a child, through the universe of green, I slid and squealed, and that day of grass cutting turned into a night of cigarette tips glowing against the witch kiss smothered blue black. I thought maybe I heard drums as I ran behind my brothers, cutting and cutting. Thought maybe I heard singing when my mother took over and cut the edges near the pond rocks. The grass falling like a lover before her, once a tall patch, now a soft pallet, a laced mat, a rug of love and fiber in our yard. In her last life, my mother was a grass dancer. She entered the circle, donning feathers and bells, head high above the rest, something sacred and special in her steps as she danced for her people, her children, me. She knew the language of grass, knew the way one sings and stomps down the spring green for a season of gatherings, for a child to run through it all, for a daughter to remember, free and clear.